before the recording that I think what makes a film really stand out is the scale of everything. Even particularly that TARDIS set is vast. Was that something that you pushed for in the script, or did that come more from design?
That came more from design and the executive producer, Phil Siegel. Obviously, we were hoping this would be what's called a backdoor pilot that would open the door to a series. So it was. I was hoping that it would be something that would be happening regularly in Vancouver. So yes, it was aimed at a series. So as a result, they were building a series set, and they thought they would be, unlike most Doctor Who's, where the TARDIS sort of ends up breaking down on a planet or something, and they have the adventure outside of the TARDIS. I think what I was always going for with the TARDIS was the idea of the infinite space within the TARDIS. The idea that you could look up and there's the universe. The idea that that really it was interdimensional inside the TARDIS. And I think that was an idea that I really wanted to bring home in this TARDIS, and I think that appealed to people. So it meant that there would be other ways to getting into adventures besides going in and out the front door of the police box. And I was very excited by that. So as a result, they built this set, which became much bigger than what I had in the script. And I think they spent almost $2 million of the budget building the set for the TARDIS, because also you had the cloister room, which is normally the smallest room in a church, which they turned into a cathedral. And then when they did that, they said, oh, well, the final battle is going to be in the cloister room. And the Eye of Harmony, I thought was going to be a small thing, and it turns into that giant fairground, eye that opens. So there was a lot of fun that the designer had building that out. And then, of course, Jeffrey did this wonderful job of building the action around it. And the whole thing expanded, kept on expanding, because we wanted it to look big and exciting, and like something people would want to watch every week. So that's why it had that scale. So I think they were trying to make the whole thing look bigger. So yes, people who loved the old cozy side of Doctor Who, we knew they would be disappointed, or that it wasn't like that anymore. But it's just the way it goes.
And you say it was sort of a backdoor pilot for more adventures or a TV series. Had you been involved at all in planning what that might be, or was it, for your point of view, just this single script?
People think that it didn't get picked up because it lost out to Roseanne on the numbers that night. And yes, it lost out to Roseanne. But in reality, I found through doing the documentary, through talking to Phil Siegel, talking to other key people who were involved, that people were happy to go to series. And there were these two options that Universal had. One was Sliders, which they understood. And the other was this strange British show, Doctor Who, which they didn't really understand. And so they said, okay, we'll go for Sliders. So it was a choice between these two shows at the end of the day as to what they were going to do. It wasn't so much that it failed, because it really didn't fail that badly. You know what I mean? If you got those numbers now, the show would be a big hit. And certainly in Britain, it got very good numbers. So it wasn't really a question of whether or not it failed. It was a question of whether or not Universal wanted to pick it up. They made for them an artistic choice. They wanted something they understood better, which I think at the end of the day was very good for Doctor Who, because I think if it had gone to series in America, it would have been a very different animal. It would have been a very different show now. The fact that it came back the fact that Big Finish kept it alive so beautifully, you know what I mean? And they certainly kept Paul's Doctor alive so well over the years. The fact that Eccleston did such a fantastic job. Eccleston really took the Doctor, I think, where Paul would have wanted it to go. I think he did that. Whether or not I would have been involved is purely an academic question. You know, I went on and did other stuff. So it would have been academic. I don't know whether or not that would have happened at all. Obviously, if people had said, "Yeah, do you want to run Doctor Who?" I would have gone, "Of course, why not?"
I think it's a wonderful bridge between the classic series and, you know, very much studio based to the more modern show. You know, it's a wonderful sort of midpoint between the two. But I was interested is when McGann was cast, did you then have conversation with him about how he wanted his Doctor? Script? Did you rework parts of the script?
You know, I didn't, not that much. I think Philip Siegel did. I only really met Paul when he arrived in Vancouver, and he'd had a haircut, and Philip Siegel had this notion of it being a big, you know, baroness could have hairdo that he'd had previously was sort of mortified, and so we suddenly, you know, had to get a wig for him. And I think Paul was probably a bit nervous because he was, you know, starting out on something that looked like it could have been very big. He was signing contracts for years and years. He was, so, you know, but this happens all the time to actors. You know, you suddenly everything is full of opportunity, and then the next minute, your focus has to change, and you have to move on. But I didn't really have much back and forth with him directly, and even though I was doing quite a bit of rewriting on the set, or, you know, while it was being shot, it was mostly sort of plot rewriting. It wasn't stuff that affected his character. The stuff that I'd written for his character pretty much stayed, almost from the first draft, to be quite honest, almost from first and second draft. It's like that was the main thing that was really solid all the way through all the different drafts and all the machinations that went on between Universal, Fox, BBC, and, you know, whoever else. And so it was like all that back and forth would go on. But the one thing that didn't really change much was Paul's character. We'd worked that out, and I always kind of knew it was going to be Paul in a way. They'd been auditioning him before I came on board, so I always knew it was going to be somebody like him. I didn't, so it wasn't that much of a surprise when he was cast.
So how early on were you brought into the project then? If you say they were already casting the Doctor, are we talking months or weeks? Or
they'd been trying to set it up as a series out of Universal, right? So they had written a series Bible. They'd had attempts at pilots, and it was with Spielberg, and it was through Amblin at that point. And Spielberg basically didn't like any of the scripts that came in the door, and so it was fairly late in the day that the TV series was dead there. But then they found out that Trevor Walton, who was British and who was running TV movies at Fox, he was into the idea of doing a backdoor pilot. So they started setting that up. Really, Philip Siegel doing it, you know, being vaguely dishonest about whether or not Amblin were on board as far as the BBC was concerned. There was a whole bunch of stuff was going on. And so there, somehow they had a conversation, and my name came up because I'd worked with all the parties. You know what I mean? For Amblin, I'd written, you know, Young Indiana Jones, and so George and both Stephen both liked my writing, and that was that. And for the BBC, I'd done lots of stuff previously, and certainly, Trevor Walton knew my work, and so everybody knew what I'd done. So it came to me almost, I think, I can't remember when, it must have been sort of in the spring or something. And so it was very quick. And I went in and I did a very simple pitch, you know, and pitched basically the whole hospital stuff and the whole, the previous doctor dying, and then the fact that he has to learn who he is in order to save the world from the master, and so it was a very simple pitch, and everybody went, oh well, that sounds good, and so then I was commissioned, and really it got greenlit initially off like the first and second drafts, got greenlit very quickly, then and up and down, all the ups and downs of normal production. But it was fast. We were shooting by Christmas, and so it was. It wasn't like years that I was involved. Previous to me, it had been years. And there's a book that I only read afterwards called The Nth Doctor, which actually goes into all the other scripts written by fans in America, that goes into all the other scripts, comparing them to what I made at the end, what we did at the end, and it's, I can only read bits of it, to be quite honest, but it's really quite an interesting book.
Having inherited, a project that's gone through various versions, would one of the first things you've done would be to speak to Jeffrey Sachs, the director?
Jeffrey wasn't brought on until the script was really greenlit. So I already got the script to a point where they were going to spend the money. And so I did that without Jeffrey at all. And Jeffrey basically read pretty much a finished script. And then what Jeffrey did, which was wonderful, was he really brought a lot of the good comedy to the film and style. And he made it, as glossy and strong as it needed to be. And basically, we were both with the same agent, and so when the script came in, I think it was my agent's idea to send it to Jeffrey, who committed quite quickly, I think, to the project. But yes, no, the main creative relationship was with Philip Siegel and Joe Wright at the BBC. So those were the two main creative forces, and Trevor to quite a large degree, because Trevor was Fox was primarily paying for the film. So BBC were putting in, probably what would be I don't know, a fifth or a quarter of the budget. The rest of the budget was coming from America, and that's why it's an American piece at the end of the day.
Jeffrey was very keen to introduce the comedy, which I think the film, Doctor Who had been funny before and was afterwards, but comedy is a wonderful part of it. Was that something that you two were keen to introduce?
Yes, I mean, I might write something very serious, like, the moment where the Doctor actually remembers being with his father on Gallifrey, and it would be this serious, it would be almost poetic sort of scene, and then it would be Jeffrey who says, no, Matthew, we need a comedic thing to pay it off, maybe something connected with the shoes that he was trying on earlier, you know what I mean? And so it was probably Jeffrey who said, these shoes, they fit. That's probably Jeffrey's line, if we're talking about. So the back and forth between everyone is the puncturing of the Doctor's kind of heavier stuff, where he'll say stuff, and then he'll say something kind of quite light after it. That came from an interaction with Jeffrey. And a little bit actually with Trevor Walton. Occasionally would come back and say, and have a couple of lines for Daphne in a strange way, for Dr. Holloway.
Doing Doctor Who Am I, in talking to fans, but also people involved in the production, has it made you reevaluate anything about it? Has it changed your perception of the whole thing?
Interestingly enough, yes, because in the documentary is more about how we regenerate in some ways, and it's about how fans operate as a community more than it is about the show. The documentary is not so much about the show. It's about fans and what people bring to the table with Doctor Who. And for me, my Doctor Who is completely wound up as well with my father. And my father, so little things like the show, my father was in the Gunfighters and he played Doc Holliday. And I never saw the connection that my dad was playing an American doctor, and then I'd gone and written another story about the Doctor arriving in America and meeting up with Doc Holloway. It was like some weird kind of dreamy connection between the two. And I only realized that when I was at a convention in Long Island and they wanted to put on a show of all of Anthony Jacobs' scenes from the Gunfighters, which I was dreading because even though I'd gone to the set as a child and I knew about it, I didn't really know anything about it. So it was like when I was there, I was like 10 years old or something, and so it was like a distant memory. So I was really worried about this panel, and when they did the panel, it was quite a revelation to see actually how much of the TV movie how much the TV movie or bits of the TV movie owe to the Gunfighters in some way. So so in answer to your question, yes, doing the documentary revealed things like that. Also reveals, things about the nature of Doctor Who as a sort of philosophical kind of adventure story, which I don't think is the same as Star Trek, where it's more of a celebration of American imperialism, which is what you get in Star Trek, and Star Wars, which is I'm not quite sure what Star Wars is. It's just a sort of it drifted, didn't it? It suddenly became an examination of early 20th century politics.
On the note of the joy that is Doctor Who's humanity, it's a lovely point to say thank you very much for your time, Matthew. It's been absolutely a delight to talk to you.
You too, and I hope people enjoy watching it again.